The PS5 may officially be out now, but the PS4 is still such a great console, in large part because of its exclusive library. The PS4 just has so many great exclusives, and I think right now is the perfect time to go back and play some of these great games, especially if you missed out on these great games before. Now, maybe you missed out on the PS4 last generation and own a PS5 now, which is backwards compatible with the PS4. And if that's the case, these are great games to play on the PS5, and I think every game on this list has aged well. Regardless though, we will take a look at the top 20 PS4 exclusives of all time. Now, do keep in mind this is all my own personal opinion, and there's a chance that I may miss one of your favorite games. And if that does happen, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, let's jump right into the list. And to start things off, I have Until Dawn, which is an interesting game. This is a horror slasher type of game that kind of plays like a Hollywood movie. It's got everything that you would expect from a horror film, including the stereotypical flaws in their teenage characters and all the cliches that you would come to expect from a horror movie. This game really is like playing through a horror film, though you have an impact on the decisions, and that is a fun twist for fans of the genre. You're no longer just watching people make dumb decisions that lead to their death, but now you can actually play a part in that. And that's one thing that really stands out with Until Dawn. It's both tense with a lot of thrills and entertaining at the same time. Now for this next spot, I actually combined two racing games here, Gran Turismo Sport and Wipeout Omega Collection. First you have Gran Turismo Sport, which is a racing simulator that focuses on its multiplayer. Not everybody was thrilled about this change for the Gran Turismo franchise, but this still is a really good racing game that fans of the genre will like. If you want something a little different though, you can try out Wipeout Omega Collection, which is a futuristic racer and actually one of the best the genre has ever seen. Really, Wipeout and F-Zero are some of the premier titles for futuristic racers, so you definitely need to check this game out if you like those type of games. So here I have one of the most unique games on this list, Dreams. Just from how impressive this game is, it ranks right at the top of this list. But this is a very niche type of game that's not for everybody. You're either going to love this game or you're just not going to care, and that's because this is a creative type of game where you essentially make your own game. Media Molecule, which is popular for their Little Big Planet franchise, went all out on making some creation tools for fans, and it is super impressive on what you can do in Dreams. I mean, if you want to make a first-person shooter, you can do that. If you want to make a Zelda clone, hey, that's possible as well. Really, anything that you set your mind to, you can find a way to make that happen in Dreams, and if you are a creative person, then Dreams might be right up your alley. Now, here's a game that was kind of reviewed a little harshly when it first released, and that's Days Gone. It did launch with some bugs and the performance was a little inconsistent, but they did get much of that fixed up with some patches, and it turned out to be a pretty good game in the long run, especially on the PS5 where it runs like an absolute dream. Definitely play it on the PS5 if you get the chance. Days Gone, though, is a single-player driven game set in a zombie apocalypse where you play as a biker, and that bike is a nice companion as you drive around the world using that bike. It's a lot of fun. The traversal is nice for an open world game, and that combat is a lot of fun as well. It's well acted with its voice actors, and Days Gone is among the better zombie games out right now. I also need to point out that the visuals look fantastic in Days Gone. Ratchet & Clank is one of the longest running PlayStation franchises to date, being around since the PlayStation 2 days, and on the PS4 they actually reimagined what the first game would be like on modern hardware. Now, this isn't quite a remake of the first game, but rather I would say it's more of a reimagined game, and it's a very good one at that. A lot of fans are talking about how good Rift Apart looks on the PS5, but truthfully, Ratchet & Clank on the PS4 is rather impressive as well. Insomniac clearly knows how to make a good-looking animated game, but where Ratchet & Clank really stands out is with its gameplay. It's got some platforming to it with a heavy focus on insanely destructive and creative weapons. It's always a lot of fun to play Ratchet & Clank with all these creative gadgets, and you have charming characters to just make a good experience from beginning to end. A lot of people simply look at Nioh 2 as another Dark Souls clone. We have seen a lot of Dark Souls clones over the years, but Nioh 2 is so much more than just that. This game was developed by Team Ninja, which is well known for their work on Ninja Gaiden, which is one of the best hack-and-slash franchises of all time. So right away, the combat in Nioh 2 is just absolutely excellent, with great enemy design. It's a nice mix of something like Dark Souls with Ninja Gaiden, and then you have a loot system that just makes everything so addicting. Nioh 2, for whatever reason, seems to be often overlooked, but it absolutely shouldn't be. It is one of the better action RPGs in recent years. Now, the next 5 titles on this list kind of shows you just how unique the PS4 library is, and that starts with The Last Guardian. There was a long wait for this game, as it was originally expected to release on the PlayStation 3, but the wait was well worth it. And right away, you play as a young boy thrown into a mysterious world where he meets a giant dog-like creature, Trico. From this point forward, the game centers around their relationship and escaping the castle-like location. You do have a lot of puzzles in this game alongside some platforming, both of which I greatly enjoyed. The controls can be a little clunky at times though, but it's such a beautiful, heartwarming experience, and frankly, you're not going to find another game quite like The Last Guardian. Next up, I have Detroit Become Human, and the first thing about this game is it really is just absolutely stunning. The character models and voice acting is so well done in Detroit Become Human, and it's easy to make a connection with its many characters. Now, some people do feel like they overdo the narrative with some serious topics, but with androids instead. But even then, I actually really enjoyed the stories in this game for what it was. Now, Detroit does play out like a AAA point-and-click adventure game, so you will have plenty of decisions to make in its branching story, and there's also a number of quick-time events. Really, the main focus is on its story rather than its gameplay, but if you want a good cinematic-driven game, then I think Detroit is worth a try. And again, here's another unique game being Death Stranding. Death Stranding comes from the legendary developer Hideo Kojima, and this is his first game away from Konami and Metal Gear Solid. So yeah, there was a lot of hype for this game as he is very creative, and fans wanted to see what he could do with a new IP. Well, it turned out to be a very different game than what people expected, and that did lead to some mixed opinions. You can kind of explain Death Stranding as a walking simulator where you play as a futuristic delivery person, and yeah, it is a little bit strange. But it's such an interesting game at the same time. There are some paranormal type enemies that roams the world, which will impede your deliveries. It's got this toxic rain type of stuff that can greatly affect your packages, and the story itself is highly engaging with plenty of memorable characters. Again, this is a slow-paced game, and it's not for everybody per se, but for those who don't mind taking things a little bit slower, you might find a game that sticks with you for years to come. Gravity Rush 2 is one of those games that gets overlooked, and then when you play it, you just can't figure out why. Now, fans of the PlayStation Vita will probably recognize this game right away, with the first being a higher-end exclusive when it first launched. The remaster is on the PS4 now, but the sequel was developed with the PS4 in mind instead. Well, it translated to home consoles very well. It has a pleasing art style with likable characters, and the gameplay is really interesting in how it works. You have access to this open world, and it's all about manipulating gravity. You can fall up, down, sideways, or whichever way you want, which is not only a fun way of traversing the city, but also a unique way to approach combat. If you did play the first game though, Gravity Rush 2 really does everything better, and you have more ways to use gravity than in the first game. Really, if you haven't played these games already, do yourself a favor and check them out. And to start off the top 10, I have Shadow of the Colossus, which is technically in the same world as The Last Guardian. Just like The Last Guardian, it also has an amazing atmosphere with a thought-provoking and mysterious world. It's completely different in terms of gameplay though, where you hunt down all these colossal monsters. Before Zelda Breath of the Wild was a thing, in Shadow of Colossus, climbing was a big mechanic as you had to traverse these giant monsters to slay them. It is an absolute thrilling experience, though this game was originally released on the PlayStation 2. This is actually a remake and one of the best I've seen. I mean, this game looks superb visually, and really, it's a game that stuck with me for well over a decade as I played it years ago. While the story isn't always in the forefront, it is something that makes you think, and when you combine that with its excellent gameplay and beautiful visuals, I do think it stands tall as a lasting, instant classic. Persona 5 Royal is one of those JRPGs that fans are going to be talking about for well over a decade. These games always age well with their timeless gameplay and stories. Well, Persona 5 is viewed as an all-time great within the genre. Now, this isn't necessarily my favorite Persona game in the franchise, as I do personally prefer 4, but there is a reason this game is so beloved. It does have very likable characters with an interesting story, and an even better twist as the game goes along. Its combat and dungeons were also a big upgrade from previous titles, and I can easily say its combat is one of my favorite within the turn-based genre. It does have a monster capturing type of mechanic to it, where you can fuse different demons and then exploit your enemy weaknesses with different elemental attacks. It just feels good to play. The thing about Persona though is you're always trying to balance your social life on top of solving an ongoing mystery as you travel to these parallel worlds. You are, after all, just a high school student, and that means taking care of schoolwork and hanging out with friends. That's one thing that fans really enjoy about Persona, though I will say, if you plan on playing this game, just make sure you realize it's going to take you a long time to complete it, as it does take upward of 100 hours to complete. PlayStation first-party studios developed several high-quality new IP for the PS4, and Ghostatsushima is one of those games. In Ghost, you play as a samurai that's put in a situation that has him choosing whether he should fight with honor and fight his enemies face-to-face, or to fight stealthily as a ghost. That goes directly against being a samurai, but isn't necessary to dismantle your foes to protect the ones you love. You as a player can make that choice for yourself, but where this game really shines is with its combat and visuals. I mean, right away, I think this is one of the best looking games out right now, especially on the PS5. It looks good on the PS4 as well, of course, but it did get a PS5 upgrade, and it is essentially a PS5 game now if you want to play it there. Regardless though, the combat is fun, mixing in all of its different fighting styles and gadgets. Parries is very important in this game as well, and frankly, it can be challenging depending on the difficulty you choose to play. Now, I wasn't necessarily huge into the story of Ghost, but from a gameplay standpoint, I do think this is a phenomenal game. And here I have yet another new IP, Horizon Zero Dawn. I love the setting in this game. It's so fascinating to me with a mix of technology in a more primal era. I mean, you have robotic dinosaurs, and it just looks really cool. Better yet, it's a fun game as well as you travel an open world with your bow and arrow. I do think this is one of the better open world games to date because it's just a joy to explore with its fascinating setting. You always find yourself amazed at what you see going location to location. There are some RPG mechanics to it as well, and just like its setting, they also have a nice mix of gameplay. At times, you'll have to fight in a high-tense, fast-paced situation, where other times you can be a little bit more methodical in stealth-based situations. I do think that Horizon Zero Dawn is a complete package though. It has fun gameplay, it looks great, and it's got a pretty interesting story as well. Now here I have The Last of Us Remastered and Part 2. Now the second game can be very controversial. Some people believe it's an absolute masterpiece, while others just absolutely hate it for story-related reasons. And I will say I do prefer the first game. I enjoyed its story and characters a lot more in the first game, but the second game is still very impressive. It might be one of the most impressive games that I've ever seen, actually. It's well acted, and the attention to detail is just astounding. I mean, really, every animation in this game is just so perfect, and the combat feels so intimate. I really have to applaud Naughty Dog on what they were able to achieve in terms of gameplay. Again, I do prefer the story in the first game, but if you enjoyed the second game, I completely understand. And the good news is that the sequel did get a PS5 update. So again, the PlayStation 5 is a great option to play the sequel. Fans have been wanting a remake of Final Fantasy VII for years and years, and that's finally happening. Now, we only have Part 1 so far, but it feels like a standalone game because of how much they expanded on the characters. I mean, Part 1 is technically only like 15% of the full Final Fantasy VII, but because they expanded it so much, the remake is 30 plus hours long. I mean, just to kind of put that into perspective, the original game took about 36 hours, so that just goes to show you on how much they expanded the remake. One thing that fans just love about Final Fantasy VII so much, though, is its characters and story, and I think the remake does the characters perfectly. Honestly, I would say that they're even better than the original, and even its side characters are memorable. And then on top of that, it has fun gameplay as well. Now, you can play it as a turn-based game if you want, or action-oriented, which does allow you to freeze the game and choose different attacks. It's really unique and fun in how it works. All I know though is I'm ready for part 2, as part 1 was amazing in my opinion. Spider-Man has always been a popular and beloved superhero, so when it was announced that Insomniac Games was developing a Spider-Man game, that was very exciting. I mean, Insomniac is a proven, talented developer. Well, the combination worked out so well that I actually think that Spider-Man for the PS4 is the best Spider-Man experience you can have. Yes, I personally think that it's better than any of the movies. The characters and story is highly interesting as you play as Peter Parker as an adult. Not only that, but the gameplay is incredibly smooth as well. Out of every open world game that I've ever played, Spider-Man has by far my favorite traversal system. Swinging building to building is both fast and fun. You can pretty much be wherever you want within minutes. And coming from Insomniac, you can also expect insanely fun gadgets to use in combat, much like in Ratchet and Clank. Some games like to focus on production values, cinematics, and stories. And that's all great and everything, but Bloodborne is all about its gameplay through and through. It's a very atmospheric game with grotesque monsters, but its combat is absolutely phenomenal. You're just not going to find a game that has much better combat than Bloodborne. It being a From Software game though, yes, it is similar to Dark Souls. It's brutally difficult, death is extremely punishing, and they have some of the best designed bosses in the entire industry. However, it is a faster paced game than Dark Souls, and some fans may even prefer that. Regardless of which style you like though, both of them are all-time greats, and they're a must-play experience as long as you don't mind a challenge. And at the number 2 spot, I actually have some of my all-time favorite games, the Uncharted franchise. And the cool thing about the PS4 is you have access to every Uncharted game except for Golden Abyss, which is a PlayStation Vita game. That's a good game as well, which I would recommend, but 1 through 4 and The Lost Legacy are some of the most fun and gripping experiences of my gaming life. And yeah, I have played a lot of games. Now, I can't just point to one good thing about these games though, because it's just such a well-rounded experience. They have great stories with you playing as a treasure hunter. They do kind of play out like a movie, and a very good one at that. Then there's the gameplay, which is a lot of fun with a variety of things to do. It's got strong gun mechanics, platforming, and interesting puzzles. And then there's the characters, and like every single character in these games are memorable and well acted. If any franchise deserves to be called a masterpiece, that would be the Uncharted franchise, and if you think about it, Uncharted is the franchise that changed Sony forever. All these cinematic games that came afterwards was partly because of Uncharted. You know, these games are just absolutely amazing, and when you play 1 through 4, you get to see the evolution of the characters. I just cannot recommend these games enough. And at the number 1 spot, I have none other than God of War, which was a huge surprise to me. Truthfully, I did not love the original God of War trilogy. I think they're fun games and everything, but I was never big into their stories. Well, that completely changed with the new God of War. Yes, it once again knocks it out of the park in terms of gameplay. The combat feels excellent, it's got some nice RPG mechanics to it, and it has a fun world to explore with that hub world. But then there's the story, which is what really surprised me. Kratos ends up turning into a likable character with his son, and it just has one of the best stories in video games as of this moment. I always kind of explain this game as being the perfect single-player experience because it has a great story, and it also has great gameplay. If you like single-player story-driven games, this is a must-play game. Anyways though, that's it for this list, but if I missed any of your favorites, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.